Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the Kenworth K-123 Cabover kit. It's a 125 scale kit number 687 from AMT. Now, Kenworth began its history on the West Coast, where there began to be some regulations for the length of truck and trailer combinations. So the COE design with the cab over the engine was basically invented to shorten the length of the truck. Now, Kenworth was also known for custom orders. In other words, instead of assembly line production, a customer could actually order a truck with the options and things that he wanted on it. Now, in this kit, it's a skill level 3, so it's for the intermediate builder, and it has over 300 parts molded in white, chrome, clear yellow, clear red, and includes some metal axles and rubber tubing and vinyl tires. The instruction sheet's a little vague because it's the original release. This kit coming out again around 2015, but you have to be careful and go do a lot of test fitting in order to get the parts together properly. Now, there's a detailed Cummins motor, and the cab tilts forward. It has optional wheel hubs, and overall, when you're done, it'll be about 9 3/4 inches long, 4 inches wide, and 6 inches high. The decals for the kit, the register is good and the color is great, and they've even included the initial interstate system decals that came in the original kit, as this is one of the retro deluxe boxings. Now, we'll be using Model Master liquid cement, sometimes super glue for strength for fragile parts, and white glue for the clear parts. But remember to heed all the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when using any of the products that you see or hear mentioned in the review. Our build begins with construction of the motor. So as you see here, cut all of the parts off of the sprues, clean up the edges, and even the chrome you may need to touch up after you've cleaned off those attachment points. Throughout the kit, you'll find that there's a lot of flash on these molds. These are old molds and old designs, and in order to remedy some of the sinks, I think they put a little extra pressure on this one. So you'll have to do a lot of trimming and cleaning up. Additionally, know that there's no part numbers on the assigned to the parts, so you'll have to use the pictorial guide here to make sure that you're getting the right pieces for your part and compare that to the instruction guide. First, we can assemble the halves of the motor block, and then add the oil pan, the front cover, the dipstick, the rocker covers, and the water outlet after the coolant fuel filters, and then paint the whole unit tan. Now assemble transmission halves, the front oil filter, and paint that unit flat black. Now assemble the water pump and the upper oil cooler and paint those flat black too. Paint the starter, the lower oil cooler, and the Freon pump semi-gloss black. Then the exhaust manifolds and intake pipes are steel colored. Now assemble the turbine and the top filter. Now we can mount the transmission. Assemble the water manifold and the lower oil cooler and add that to the block, and then add the exhaust manifold to the block and the turbine to it. Now the starter can be installed, and add the fan belt and the fan, and add the alternator to the belt and install that. Now add the water pump to the belt and install that, connecting the water pump to the lower oil cooler. Now install the breather, the top filter, and filler cap to the rocker covers, and install the intake pipe. Add the Freon pump and the fuel pump. Now add the fuel line and the oil line, and set the complete unit aside for now to dry. Let's work on the front tires and wheels. They're chrome now, and if you wish to leave them like that, you can, or you can paint them your choice of color. You just have to remove the chrome in a bath of bleach. Just shake it around in there for about 10 minutes and the chrome will disappear. Now, to give the tires a road used look, just roll and press the tread on a flat piece of 220 grit sandpaper to rough up the surface. Then the rim slides into the tire and the front ring is attached in place. Take a look at the pieces for the rear tires, and they're a lot like the fronts, but there's 4 sets of dual tires. So to give the tires a road look, do the same process by rolling them on a flat piece of sandpaper. Now attach the hub to the brakes and paint those units and the rear rims the chassis color. Now I used orange, and so you can also either choose a stock or custom hub covers, and insert the rear rim into the tire and add the ring to the front side. Now insert the front rim and add the ring to the back side of the rim. Now assemble the inner and outer tires together. These are the parts for the chassis and suspensions, and note that there are multiple steps to finish it, and it's built in stages, but as this is a fleet vehicle, the chassis would have been painted as a whole in the fleet color, in this case orange. So I'm going to detour from the instructions a little bit here and assemble the sections that need to be painted orange, and then go back and add the other parts into place. And so now we can put the frame together, and we're going to start with one of the frame rails and assemble the 3 cross members, attaching them to that rail. Then add the rear cross member and the rear leaf spring, then add a front leaf spring. On the opposite rail, add the remaining leaf springs, and then attach the rails together, aligning the attachment points. On the rear axle, add the cross tube and then the underbell and the cab mount, and then attach the upper cab mount and cab lock. Now add the engine mounts and tack the rear axle brackets into place until later on, so we can continue without painting just yet. So what you see here are the parts for the front suspension, and we're going to use some of these now and some of them later, as we need to add some of the parts that will be painted orange as a unit and then go back and finish them up. So assemble the axle with the retainers, pins, and caps, and then insert the axle onto the leaf spring. On the driver's side, add the idler arm and pitman arm into place and install the steering box and shift tower. Now add the cab's tilt cylinder and install that. On the passenger side, add the cab tilt mechanism and the cab tilt cylinder there. And this assembly will be orange later. As of now, paint the other parts like this. The tie rod is flat black, the shocks are green, the shift gate's black, and the cab lifts are steel. We can treat the rear suspension the same way by installing some now and some later. So at this point, assemble the axle halves together and the gearbox, and then the backing plates are marked for their location, so add them into place. Install the brake mounts, install the front axle and then the drive shaft, and add the rear axle connecting the drive shaft. Now add the track bars into place, and the air brake cylinders, which are chrome, will be added after painting. Now take your time and paint the chassis body color, in this case orange. Just make sure that you hit it from all angles so that you don't miss any sections, and set it aside to dry. And then add the shocks to the front leaf springs. Install the tie rod to the front axle. Then install the shift gate, remote, and the shifter. And then insert the cab lifts and install the air brake cylinders to the rear brakes. Here are the parts for the radiator, and it'll be installed along with the motor. Assemble the 3 radiator parts, add the top hose and the paint, and then paint that unit flat black, and paint the lower hose flat black. Now paint the drive shaft and the shift lever steel, and insert the drive shaft in place and install the motor. Now add the shift lever from the transmission to the shifter mount, and install the radiator in its location, and attach the top and the bottom hoses into place to the motor and radiator. And now we can glue the front tires into place by gluing the rims to the spindles. Just make sure of your alignment and keep everything symmetrical. Now we'll install the rears, so insert the metal axles into the axle housings and then press the rear tires hubs onto the axles from each side, making sure that they're equally spaced. And now we'll work with the rear chassis add-on pieces. So paint the rear flaps flat black with some white lettering. And the 5th wheel plate is orange like the chassis. Now the rear light is also orange. And now add the tail lights and the backup light to the rear light plate and attach that to the frame. Then add the rear flaps and add the front fenders. Attach the fifth wheel plate, and the fifth wheel then is snapped to the brace and just located on the plate without glue. Here are the parts for the fuel tanks. So they're next, and I use some super glue to glue the edges of those together for strength, and the braces then are painted orange. Now you can assemble the tank halves, and you'll see here in the picture the seam of the two halves. If you're going for a contest model, you'll have to sand those and fill them and recover or repaint those tanks. But that's the bane of these older kits. Now add the steps to each one and add the braces into place. Install the tanks to each side and then add the cross brace between the front tank braces. Add a filler neck to the front of each tank top and assemble the air tanks and install them on the frame bottoms behind the fuel tanks. Now install the airline mount and pole, and I drilled some holes into the mount to hold the airlines and wrap them around the pole for stability. So locate these parts for the front end, and here we'll use some super glue again. Paint the lower bumper orange and the battery box and top are orange. Now the battery and the shield are flat black. Add silver details to the battery with some red wires, and the lubrifier is attached to the bottom of the box and the shield to the front bottom and the battery inside. Now the box is mounted in place and the top set into place too. Attach the running light lenses and the fog light lenses with some white glue, and then attach the lower bumper to the top bumper and add the fog lights. Install that unit on the front end of the frame. Now grab the pieces for the exhaust, and you'll see some of those seams again. These are the parting line seams, and you either live with them or you'll have to remove them, sand them off, and get the parts replated. But now we can start the exhaust system. So go ahead and put all the parts of the pipes together that are related, and then assemble the heat shields and add the stack of your choice. You get a choice between either curved or straight pipe there. Now assemble the air intake there and add that to the support, and assemble the air cleaner in the bracket. Paint the intake duct and the front mud flap flat black, and the exhaust pipe is silver. All the other unpainted parts are body color or orange. Install this in steps and use super glue for strength. Install the air cleaner with mud flap on it and assemble the stacks onto the supports and add the air intake cap. Now install the stacks and add the upper support in place, and then add the air ducts from the turbo to the air cleaner and add the exhaust from the turbo to the stacks. Then install the intake connector to the cleaner. Now we're seeing some real progress, and you can take a look at the assembly up to this point from the left side, and then we'll take and swing around here for a shot on the right side of the main chassis. This is what we'll call a rolling chassis, and now we can build the rest of the model on this. Alright, grab these parts and we'll start on the interior. Some assembly can be done completed prior to the paint work. So for the driver's seat, assemble the pivot arms, the cross brace, and the upper brace onto the base, and then add the air cylinder and the seat. Now that assembly is semi-gloss black, and in the tub you'll add the interior support, passenger seat base, and the heater and the filler panel. Now paint that flat black too. The passenger seat is semi-gloss black, and install the driver and passenger seats and the pedals. Then the air tank goes on the underside front of the interior hump, and then paint the column black with some silver levers, and then the wheel is black with silver spokes, and the clock is silver. Attach the column to the dash and then install the completed dash into the interior. Now add the clock and the fan to the dash. The CB is silver and black and installed at your option. Now the bed is white and gray. Install that and place it behind the seats. The dash is nicely engraved, but still it's difficult to get good looking dash without the benefit of a decal. And I would look for maybe something on the internet to replace it. But if you're just going to go with a dash like we did, the dash is semi-gloss black with some wood grain panels, and the control panel is a wood grain too. Now the instrument dials and knobs are black, and the rings and the details, of course, like a chrome silver. The control panel gets installed on the dash face, and the details are kind of subtle, but if you want to try and create a decent dash, just use a very fine tip brush to detail the dials, or perhaps one of the fine chrome pens. You see here that the interior has a set of curtains that can be installed, and there's also an option. You can decide on open or closed curtain there. So assemble the sides with the front and the back, and then add the cubbyhole cabinets, and then choose the curtain that you want, and the whole unit then is painted flat black and installed on the interior around the bed. Now set the completed interior aside for later. These parts will be used to start the exterior, and then we're going to assemble the fenders, the flares, and the visor to the body at this time, and then prior to any paint work. So go over that sub-assembly and remove any of the blemishes that you find and prepare the body for paint. Remove any flash or any sprue points or even glue connection joints that need to have a little extra work done. Now we're going to wet sand the whole thing and with some 800 paper, and then rinse it off and let it air dry. Now paint the whole body with a nice high quality primer and wet sand that again with the fine 800 grit sandpaper. And now it's time to spray paint your body. I used orange to replicate the box art, and just make sure you start out with a couple of light mist coats and then add some wetter coats until you get a good even sheen without runs. Next we'll install the decals, and for the most part there are flat surfaces, but if you find a contour or something that you need to get around, use some of the aftermarket setting solutions. Use plenty of warm water to place them, and then a soft cloth to squeeze out any trapped air or water bubbles. And once they're in position, then you can go ahead and add some of the topical setting solutions. Now let that dry overnight, and then give the body a clear coat to seal them in place. I dipped the window glass into some of that floor care from Future or Pledge or whatever it's called now, and wicked off the excess and let it dry. And then I used some white glue to put the windows into place. And there's also a product from Micro called Crystal Clear, which works pretty well too. Now turn the body and the interior upside down and install that. It's a pretty tight fit. You probably won't even need any glue to put this into place. Now we'll work on added parts for the front of the body, and we're going to paint the emblem on the grille red and install the pull handles and the grille, and then install the side markers and blinkers. Now add the headlights and add the lenses to those, and the super glue was used for these assemblies for strength. A reminder, as in these pieces where there's chrome, be sure you scrape off any chrome before you use glue to attach those pieces at those points, because glue won't stick well to chrome plating or paint for that matter. Now on the passenger side, we're going to add these, and using some super glue for strength to keep them in place. So here you see the layout with the mirror, the grab handle, the door handle, side marker, and the emblem to be installed. Locate these additional pieces for the driver's side body accessories, and paint the step aluminum and install the sleeper handles, the top grab bar, the mirror, the door handle, the side marker, and the emblem. And the step is installed in place and the step plate then added. Again, use super glue for strength and remove any chrome where you glue the pieces together. So gather up the roof accessory pieces and assemble the lenses to the running lights and add those to the roof. Then add the horns, and the lenses are then added to the spotlights, and they get installed on the corners of the cab. Not mentioned in the instructions are some antennas for the CB radio, and you can paint those aluminum and install those on the mirrors. Find the two hinges that mount on the back of the grille and onto the frame. They're used to help flip the cab open. Now these don't fit very well and they're not solid, so I didn't use them. Instead, I just set the cab into place on the chassis. It would take a little rework to get these to work properly. Now we can add the license plate tags. Those are just cut out of the decal paper without removing them as water slide decals. And you use some Elmer's glue or white glue or crystal clear to add those to the front of the truck. And now to complete your construction, you can do the same thing with the tag of your choice, license tag there, to put it on the plate bracket at the back of the truck. You'll have a few pieces left over. I didn't use all of the interstate tag decals, and there will be some light lenses and numbers that are your choice and option to install. So there you have it. This kit's been around for a really long time, and the molds have not been really updated or changed, so they've got some wear on them. The instructions are a little vague, and in fact it comes from an era when they didn't even put the parts on the locations on the sprues. So this kit can be a challenge, and aside from the part fit, which leaves a little to be desired in areas, it's a difficult kit to put together. But if you have a lot of patience, you can put together a really great looking truck from the past, and it'll look great. So if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. Hope you like this premium step-by-step scale model kit review, and so that you don't miss any more, click on the ROR icon in the lower right hand corner of any review. You could also find us on Facebook and our website rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.